Have you ever felt the moment when the person you cherish turns into someone you no longer recognize, while you're still looking straight at them? The night my world split apart was a Tuesday. I was stretched out in our bedroom, staring at the ceiling of our Chicago brownstone as the pale glow from Amelia's phone washed the room in a cold, bluish haze. It was 2 a.m. Her thumb moved quickly across the screen, and a quiet, secretive smile curved along her lips. She believed I was asleep. I wasn't. For a fraction of a second, I caught a name before she tilted the screen away. David. A sharp, metallic chill crept up my throat. I had no idea who David was, but in that instant, I understood something far worse. The woman I had married no longer existed. In her place stood someone else, and I was about to dismantle everything she thought she had secured. If you truly enjoy our stories, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Let us know where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's always incredible to see how far these stories travel. Looking back, the warning signs had been there for weeks. Fine fractures spreading across a foundation I stubbornly pretended was solid. Late meetings. Work dinners. A faint trace of cologne on her coat that certainly wasn't mine. The sudden password on her phone, once as open to me as our conversations had been. Amelia, my Amelia of 10 years, was turning distant. Unreachable. Whenever I tried to close the widening gap between us, her responses felt carefully crafted and impenetrable. Smooth, polished, impossible to grip. You're imagining things. Mark, she would say, her tone coated in thinly veiled pity that made my skin prickle. Maybe you need something to do instead of constantly worrying about me. She and the man she was seeing, whoever he was, moved as though shielded by arrogance, insulated from consequences. Meanwhile, I felt like I was suffocating inside a marriage that had quietly turned into a coffin. The breaking point came on a storm-soaked Thursday. I found a crumpled receipt tucked inside her glove compartment. A charge from the bar at the Langham, drinks for 2. The date aligned perfectly with the weekend she claimed she was away at a yoga retreat. I sat alone in my car along North Michigan Avenue, rain streaking the windshield and smearing the city, lights into a blurred watercolor of despair. The shame pressed down on my chest so heavily it became difficult to breathe. I wasn't merely heartbroken. I felt erased. Every shared memory, every private joke, every vow, all of it rewritten as deception. Something inside me fractured that night. But when the pieces settled, they didn't form sorrow. They formed resolve. The devoted husband was gone. In his place stood a tactician. My first step was discreet. I hired a private investigator, an aging former cop who worked out of a cluttered office in the Loop. Suspicion wasn't enough. I needed undeniable evidence. While he gathered information, I performed my role flawlessly. The mildly oblivious husband, the slightly desperate one. I cooked dinner. I asked about her day, and I observed. I noticed her typing messages beneath the dinner table. I heard her step into other rooms to take calls, her voice lowered into a soft, intimate murmur. Then the investigator delivered the file, blurry photographs, but unmistakable. Amelia, and a man, David, sharing a kiss outside a restaurant on Rush Street. He looked self-assured, attractive, dressed in a tailored suit. She gazed up at him with a brightness I hadn't seen directed at me in years. The report listed his full identity, David Miller, a real estate developer. Most importantly, he was married. His wife's name was Sarah. The strategy had to be flawless. Calculated orchestration of legal, social, and emotional collapse. I began with money. Amelia enjoyed luxury, much of it supported by my income. With assistance from a forensic accountant, I carefully tracked every expense connected to him. Gifts, hotel stays, restaurant bills charged to our joint accounts. I transferred my inheritance into a protected trust, a safeguard my attorney assured me was airtight. Socially, I started laying groundwork. With a troubled expression, I would mention to friends, "Amelia seems so withdrawn lately. She's been spending a lot of time working with a new client. David Miller." I made sure the name lingered. I wanted it introduced gently. From me, wrapped in apparent innocence. The final stage of my plan was merciless. Our anniversary approached. I reserved a table at Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse, the very place where we had our first date. I invited our closest circle, the same friends who had once celebrated our wedding. Then, through an anonymous message, I ensured that David's wife, Sarah, would be seated at the bar that same evening, waiting for a husband who would never arrive. Amelia walked in glowing, dressed in something new I knew I hadn't purchased. She played her role convincingly, the affectionate wife marking another year of marriage. The speeches began. Stories were shared. Glasses were raised. Then, I stood. Holding my drink, I turned to face her. My heart felt carved from ice. "To my wife," I began evenly. "She's taught me many things. About devotion, about heartbreak. And recently she's introduced me to new acquaintances. People like David." A flash of alarm flickered in her eyes. The table fell silent. "And I feel as though I've come to know his wife even better," I continued, lowering my voice. "Don't you, Sarah?" I didn't say Amelia. I called her Sarah. The color drained from her face, not just surprise, but the horrifying realization that her carefully crafted illusion was collapsing in front of everyone. Her gaze darted across our friends' stunned expressions. Then, toward the bar. A woman stood there, staring at our table as her world visibly disintegrated. Sarah Miller. Amelia's hands began to tremble, the shaking spreading through her entire body. The smug confidence vanished, replaced by the raw ugliness of exposure. She tried to speak. No words came. The divorce papers were delivered the following day. The infidelity clause in our prenuptial agreement was enforced. The evidence was undeniable. Friends distanced themselves. Her reputation unraveled. She was left alone with the consequences of her own decisions. Occasionally, I catch sight of her, in the city that once belonged to both of us. She appears older now, worn thin by the path she chose. We never exchange words. There is nothing left worth saying. The quiet between us weighs more than any conversation ever could.